I'm Sarah, 28 years old, and I discovered my brother Michael's fake cancer diagnosis was fabricated just hours before my medical school graduation ceremony. When he dramatically announced his emergency chemotherapy to steal my spotlight, I revealed I knew the truth. His confident smirk disappeared when I mentioned financial records. The entire family went silent as I exposed that I'd been secretly funding Michael's lavish college lifestyle for years through anonymous donations. That day changed our family forever, unraveling years of deception, favoritism, and buried resentments none of us were prepared to face. I can still picture everyone's expressions that afternoon. Shock, disbelief, anger. Before I explain how everything unfolded, let me tell you how we got to this breaking point. This family drama taught me that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you most. So, if you've ever dealt with a manipulative sibling, you'll want to hear how this story ends. Growing up, Michael and I appeared to have a normal sibling relationship from the outside. 3 years younger than me, he was always considered the charming one, the social butterfly who could talk his way out of any trouble. I don't think our parents ever realized how their obvious favoritism shaped both our personalities and our relationship throughout our childhood. From middle school onward, I was the studious one, the planner. I organized my schedule around homework, maintained perfect attendance, and spent weekends studying while my friends went to parties. Meanwhile, Michael seemed to glide through life effortlessly. He'd forget assignments and charm teachers into extensions. He'd break curfew and convince our parents it was a misunderstanding. The pattern was unmistakable. I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition while Michael received praise simply for showing up. Sarah, you're the older sister. You need to be more understanding, my mother would say whenever I complained about the double standards. This phrase echoed throughout my teenage years, a constant reminder that my feelings were secondary to Michael's comfort and convenience. Despite the frustrating family dynamics, I excelled academically. I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, where I completed my pre-med requirements with a perfect GPA. My parents attended my college graduation, but spent most of the ceremony discussing Michael's struggles in his sophomore year, effectively overshadowing my achievement once again. After college, I took a gap year to work at a biotech startup while studying for the MCAT. The company was developing revolutionary gene therapy treatments, and I was fortunate to join as one of their first research assistants. Those early months were grueling, 12-hour days in the lab, studying for medical school entrance exams at night, living on instant meals to save money for application fees. But the sacrifice paid off spectacularly. By age 24, when our startup was acquired by a major pharmaceutical company, I found myself with stock options worth over $8 million. At 25, I started medical school debt-free with enough money invested to never worry about finances again. Ironically, my financial windfall coincided with my parents' economic struggles. They'd been running a small dental practice for 15 years, but a combination of increased competition, insurance complications, and poor investment decisions had left them drowning in debt. They never told me directly about their problems. My father was too proud to admit financial failure. I only discovered the extent of their troubles when my mother called me in tears because they couldn't make payroll for their dental hygienist. That night, I made a decision that would complicate our family relationships for years to come. I would help them financially, but in secret. I didn't want them to feel humiliated by needing their daughter's assistance. More importantly, I didn't want Michael to know about my wealth. He'd already shown troubling signs of entitlement whenever good things happened in my life. When I brought my boyfriend David home for Christmas that year, Michael's behavior was particularly revealing. David was completing his residency in cardiology at Johns Hopkins, brilliant, dedicated, and genuinely kind. The moment Michael met him, I noticed an immediate shift in his demeanor. He became louder, more attention-seeking, and kept steering conversations toward his own college experiences and future plans. "Your brother seems ambitious," David said later, diplomatically. "He always tried to see the best in people." "That's one way to put it," I replied, not wanting to poison David's impression with my complicated feelings about Michael's behavior. By this point, I had already established the complex financial arrangement that would later become the center of our family crisis. Through a network of shell companies and educational foundations, I was covering my parents' business loan payments, their mortgage, and their credit card debt. I'd also created an anonymous scholarship program that covered Michael's tuition, housing, and provided him with a generous monthly stipend for living expenses. None of them knew the money came from me. My parents believed they'd qualified for a small business relief program and debt consolidation assistance. Michael thought his scholarship came from a prestigious alumni foundation that rewarded promising future leaders. I wanted to help without becoming the family ATM or fundamentally altering our relationship dynamics. Looking back, I realize I was enabling unhealthy patterns rather than addressing the root causes of our family dysfunction. But at the time, it seemed like the most compassionate solution. I was protecting their dignity while ensuring their financial security. What I failed to anticipate was how my secrecy would eventually create the perfect conditions for an explosive confrontation. The biotech acquisition wasn't just financially successful, it made headlines in several industry publications. Our small research team had developed a breakthrough treatment for a rare genetic disorder, and the acquisition price reflected the potential impact of our work. When everything was finalized, I found myself with a net worth exceeding $15 million before my 30th birthday. I was careful not to display my wealth ostentatiously. I continued driving my reliable Honda Civic, lived in a modest apartment near campus, and maintained the lifestyle of a typical medical student. Very few people knew about my financial situation, which was exactly how I preferred it. When I learned about my parents' business troubles, I was shocked by how severe their situation had become. They were 6 months behind on their commercial lease, maxed out on multiple credit cards, and had borrowed against their house to keep the dental practice afloat. The stress was taking a visible toll on both of them. My mother had developed chronic headaches, and my father seemed to age years in a matter of months. "Miss Chambers, are you certain you want to structure the assistance this way?" my financial advisor, Rebecca, asked when I outlined my plan to help them anonymously. Family financial arrangements can become quite complicated. "I'm positive," I insisted. "They can't know it's from me. My brother especially can't find out." Rebecca helped me establish several legitimate legal entities that would serve as intermediaries between my wealth and my family's needs. We created a small business assistance foundation that would offer my parents a low-interest loan restructuring program. We established an educational trust that would provide Michael with what appeared to be a merit-based scholarship. The documentation was authentic, but the funding source was entirely me. Within weeks, my parents received notification that they'd been approved for emergency business assistance that would consolidate their debts at a fraction of their previous interest rates. Another letter informed them about a practice modernization grant that would help them upgrade their equipment. Michael received news that an anonymous donor had selected him for a comprehensive scholarship covering not just tuition, but housing, meals, and a monthly stipend for books and personal expenses. The transformation in their lives was immediate and dramatic. My parents stopped looking constantly stressed during family dinners. Michael moved from his cramped dorm room to a luxury apartment near campus with a view of the lake. Their gratitude was directed toward faceless institutions and fortunate circumstances, never toward me. For nearly 2 years, this arrangement seemed ideal. I could support my family without changing our relationship dynamics or creating resentment. But gradually, concerning patterns began to emerge. Despite having all his educational and living expenses covered, Michael began failing classes. By his junior year, he was on academic probation, though he told our parents he was focusing on his major coursework. As the scholarship administrator, I received his actual transcripts and grade reports. The reality was far different from what he shared with the family. More troubling was his spending behavior. Even with his generous monthly stipend, Michael frequently maxed out credit cards and called our parents for emergency financial help. He'd claim his scholarship was delayed or that he had unexpected academic expenses. My parents, still believing their own finances were precarious, would stress themselves trying to help him. When Michael maxed out his first credit card at 20, I received a panicked call from my mother. "Sarah, I hate to ask, but your brother is in some financial trouble. We've helped as much as we can, but with the practice still recovering, I pretended to contribute a modest amount while actually paying off the entire balance through my financial network. This pattern repeated multiple times over the next 2 years, with the amounts growing larger and Michael's excuses becoming more elaborate. When David proposed after 3 years of dating, I was overjoyed. We planned our wedding for the following summer, timing it perfectly with my medical school graduation. The ceremony would be small but elegant, followed by a reception at a historic venue downtown. My parents insisted on contributing to the wedding expenses, so I arranged for them to receive an unexpected insurance settlement that they could use for wedding costs, effectively allowing them to pay with my money while preserving their pride. As graduation and wedding planning progressed, Michael's behavior became increasingly erratic. As my only sibling, he was naturally involved in many aspects of the celebration planning, but he seemed to sabotage efforts at every opportunity. Important RSVPs mysteriously disappeared from his email. Vendor appointments were rescheduled without my knowledge. Catering deposits went missing from his supposedly secure handling. I initially attributed these incidents to Michael's general disorganization and his stress about his own academic performance. But a pattern was emerging that I couldn't ignore. One evening, while reviewing my financial monitoring systems, I noticed unusual charges on Michael's accounts. He'd visited multiple medical facilities and made several purchases at pharmaceutical suppliers. Around the same time, I discovered he'd been researching cancer symptoms, oncology terminology, and methods for creating fake medical documentation. A cold dread settled over me. I enhanced my monitoring of his financial activities and communications, justifying the invasion of privacy with my growing concern about his mental state and potential fraud. What I uncovered was far worse than I'd imagined. Michael wasn't just jealous of my graduation and wedding. He was actively planning to sabotage both events. Medical school graduation should have been one of the proudest moments of my life. After 4 years of rigorous study, clinical rotations, and board examinations, I was finally going to receive my MD degree. But Michael managed to turn the weeks leading up to graduation into a minefield of anxiety and manipulation. The first warning sign appeared 2 months before graduation when I arrived at the venue for our family celebration dinner planning, only to find they had no record of our reservation. Michael had called the restaurant claiming to be my assistant and canceled the booking without telling me. "I thought you said you were handling the dinner arrangements," he said when confronted, his expression innocent. I must have misunderstood. Medical school stress, right? He laughed it off, but something in his eyes suggested deliberate intent rather than genuine confusion. A week later, our photographer called in confusion because someone had contacted her claiming that the graduation ceremony had been postponed. She'd cleared her schedule and taken another booking for that day. Again, the call had come from someone claiming to represent me, though I'd never authorized any communication with our vendors. Michael's sabotage attempts became more sophisticated as graduation approached. When my grandmother called to confirm travel arrangements, she mentioned that Michael had told her the ceremony location had changed. When my medical school friends asked about the celebration dinner, several said Michael had contacted them to say it was postponed due to family medical issues. Each incident individually could be explained as miscommunication or innocent error. Together, they formed a clear pattern of deliberate interference with my special day. The most revealing incident occurred during my white coat ceremony, a traditional celebration for graduating medical students. Michael attended with our parents and spent the entire evening drawing attention to himself. He dominated conversations with family friends, telling elaborate stories about his own college experiences and future plans. When people tried to congratulate me on my achievement, he'd interrupt with comments like, "Sarah's always been the studious one, but I'm more of a people person," or "medical school is just memorization really. I'm more interested in creative problem solving." David noticed Michael's behavior and pulled me aside during the reception. "Is everything okay with your brother?" he asked quietly. "He seems really agitated tonight." "He's probably just stressed about his own graduation," I replied, though I was beginning to suspect Michael's stress was more about my success than his own academic performance. After the white coat ceremony, I discovered Michael had been spreading rumors among my medical school classmates that I was having family problems and might not be able to attend graduation. Several friends approached me with concern, asking if everything was all right and offering support during my difficult time. Around this same period, Michael began mentioning vague health concerns and mysterious doctor appointments. Initially, he was cryptic about the details, dropping hints like breadcrumbs for the family to follow. "I don't want anyone to worry," he'd say during family dinners, "but I've been having some symptoms that the doctors want to investigate further." He'd pause dramatically, ensuring everyone was listening. "It's probably nothing serious." My mother would immediately launch into concerned questioning, demanding details and offering to accompany Michael to appointments. My father would grow quiet and worried, his face creased with anxiety. The conversation would center on Michael for the remainder of the evening, with any discussion of my upcoming graduation forgotten. During graduation dress shopping, Michael created another scene by claiming he needed to leave early for a medical appointment. When my mother offered to drive him, he became emotional. "I don't want to ruin Sarah's day with my problems," he said loudly enough for other shoppers to hear. "But the doctor wants to discuss some test results, and I'm honestly scared." The other customers and shop employees immediately swarmed him with sympathy and concern, while I stood holding my graduation dress, feeling invisible in what should have been my moment. My doubts about Michael's honesty continued to multiply, but family loyalty prevented me from voicing my suspicions directly. Then I found Michael's laptop open in our parents' living room while helping them prepare for graduation guests. I knew I shouldn't snoop, but when I saw medical websites in his browser history, my concern overrode my ethics. His search history confirmed my worst fears. He'd been researching cancer symptoms, oncology treatment protocols, and methods for creating convincing fake medical documents. More disturbing were the forums he'd visited discussing how to get sympathy and family attention-seeking strategies. I also found a draft email to our extended family announcing his cancer diagnosis and explaining why he might need to leave my graduation ceremony early for emergency treatment. The email was never sent, but seeing it in black and white made my stomach drop. I should have confronted him immediately, but part of me still couldn't believe my own brother would fabricate a serious illness to steal attention from my graduation. I needed more concrete evidence, and unfortunately, Michael was about to provide it. As graduation week arrived and extended family gathered from across the country, Michael's health crisis intensified dramatically. He scheduled his most significant announcement for the graduation ceremony itself, where he would have the largest audience of family and friends. I watched his preparations with growing dread and determination. He had no idea that I knew about his deception, nor did he realize how much financial power I actually held over his life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose years of lies and fundamentally alter our family dynamics. The morning of my medical school graduation, I tucked a folder of financial documents into my purse. If Michael wanted to play games with fake medical crises, he was about to learn that I controlled far more of his life than he realized. My medical school graduation ceremony was held at the beautiful Millennium Center, a concert hall with soaring ceilings and elegant architecture. Nearly 200 graduating students filled the stage in our caps and gowns, while families packed the auditorium below. After 4 years of intense study and clinical training, this moment represented the culmination of everything I'd worked toward. David sat in the front row with my parents, grandparents, and several aunts and uncles who'd traveled to celebrate with me. The atmosphere was festive and proud as Dean Morrison called each graduate to receive their diploma. But my attention kept drifting to Michael, who appeared increasingly agitated as the ceremony progressed. He kept checking his phone, stepping out for mysterious calls, and whispering urgently with my cousin Jessica. He'd chosen to wear a baseball cap to the formal ceremony, claiming it helped with headaches from his treatment, which drew concerned looks from other family members. "Are you feeling all right, Michael?" my grandmother asked loudly enough for nearby families to hear. "You look pale, sweetheart." "I'm managing, Grandma," Michael replied with a brave smile that didn't reach his eyes. The doctors said the symptoms might get worse before they get better, but I couldn't miss Sarah's big day. My mother's face crumpled with worry, and she spent the rest of the ceremony shooting anxious glances at Michael instead of watching her daughter graduate from medical school. When my name was called, Sarah Elizabeth Chambers, Doctor of Medicine, I walked across the stage with pride, shook hands with the dean, and received my diploma. But even in that triumphant moment, I could see Michael in my peripheral vision, timing his next performance. As families gathered for photos after the ceremony, Michael suddenly doubled over, clutching his stomach. The timing was perfect, right as photographers were positioning families for formal graduation portraits. "I'm sorry," he gasped, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I thought I could make it through the day, but the treatment side effects are hitting me hard." Our extended family immediately surrounded him with concern, abandoning the photo session to focus on Michael's apparent medical crisis. My graduation photos ended up being hastily taken with a scattered, worried family instead of the joyful celebration I'd envisioned. "Maybe we should skip the dinner," my mother suggested, her voice filled with anxiety. "Michael clearly needs to rest." "No," Michael said dramatically, one hand still pressed to his stomach. "Sarah worked so hard for this. I won't let my cancer ruin her graduation dinner. I'll just need to step out occasionally for my medications." The word cancer hung in the air like a thunderclap. Several family members gasped, and my grandmother actually reached for a chair to steady herself. That's when I realized I couldn't let this charade continue any longer. I stepped forward, my diploma still in my hand, and addressed the gathered family. "Actually, before we head to dinner, I think we need to clarify something important about Michael's medical situation." Michael's face went pale, paler than his fake illness symptoms had made him appear. "Sarah, this isn't the time or place." "I think this is exactly the time and place," I said calmly. "Michael, would you like to tell everyone the truth about your cancer diagnosis, or should I?" Confused murmurs rippled through our family group. Michael's expression shifted from sick patient to cornered animal. "I don't know what you're implying," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed the screenshots I'd taken of his browser history and draft emails. "Your research into fake medical documents was quite thorough," I said quietly. "The cancer forums you visited were particularly interesting reading." Michael's face contorted with a mixture of rage and panic, but then shifted to an ugly smirk. "You went through my personal computer. That's a violation of my privacy, Sarah. Typical controlling behavior from someone who thinks she's better than everyone else." It was exactly the response I'd expected, deflection and attack rather than accountability. "You're right," I said calmly. "I did invade your privacy. But speaking of controlling behavior, Michael, did you ever wonder how you could afford that luxury apartment on a college student's budget? Or how Mom and Dad's dental practice mysteriously recovered from near bankruptcy 3 years ago? Or where exactly your full-ride scholarship came from, especially after you failed half your classes last semester?" Michael's smirk faltered as he processed what I was saying. My mother made a small sound of distress. "Sarah, this really isn't appropriate." My father began, but I cut him off. "Actually, Dad, this is completely appropriate. Because for the past 3 years, I've been funding this entire family." I opened the folder I'd brought and placed several documents on a nearby table. "Michael's scholarship? I created and funded that program. The business assistance that saved your practice? My money. The debt consolidation that saved your house? Also my money." The silence that fell over our family group was deafening. Other graduation families nearby had stopped their conversations to stare at our drama unfolding. The shell companies, the fake foundations, the anonymous trusts, it's all documented here. I continued, spreading out bank records and legal documents. "I've been paying Michael's rent, his car insurance, his credit card bills, and his medical insurance. I've bailed him out financially 7 times in the last 2 years alone." Michael's expression shifted from confusion to horror as he began to understand the implications. "You're lying," he whispered, but his voice shook with uncertainty. "The fake cancer diagnosis isn't the only fraudulent document in this family, Michael," I said firmly. "The difference is that mine were created to help you, not to manipulate and hurt people who love you." I turned to address our stunned extended family. "I apologize for this family drama on what should be a celebration of education and achievement. I hope you'll still join us for dinner, though I suspect the conversation will be quite different than what we originally planned." As I walked away from the group, I heard Michael begin to cry, real tears this time, not the performative ones he'd perfected over the years. Part of me felt terrible for exposing him so publicly, but a larger part felt relief that the web of lies and manipulation was finally unraveling. David caught up with me in the parking lot, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. "Sarah, I had no idea about any of this. The money, Michael's behavior, your family situation. I should have told you," I admitted, leaning against his car. "About the financial arrangements, about Michael's patterns, about all of it." "Yes, you should have," he agreed gently. "But I understand why you didn't. I've watched your family dynamics for 3 years. You've been trying to help them without changing the fundamental relationships." His understanding brought tears to my eyes. "What happens now?" "Now we go to your graduation dinner and figure out how to move forward," David said, taking my hand. "But first, congratulations, Dr. Chambers. You've earned this celebration, regardless of family drama." I smiled through my tears, remembering that beneath all the dysfunction and manipulation, I had actually just graduated from medical school, something I'd worked toward for nearly a decade. The graduation dinner was held at Riverside Manor, an elegant restaurant overlooking the city's waterfront. What should have been a joyful celebration of my academic achievement became an uncomfortable family crisis management session. My parents sat rigidly at the head table, barely touching their food as they processed the revelations about my secret financial support. My extended family members whispered among themselves, trying to understand what they'd witnessed at the graduation ceremony. Michael had disappeared entirely, claiming he needed to go to the hospital, though everyone now understood the true nature of his medical emergency. "I need to understand everything," my father said quietly, pulling me aside during cocktail hour. "From the beginning." So, I explained it all. The biotech acquisition, the money I'd made, discovering their financial troubles, and my elaborate plan to help without changing our family dynamics. I detailed the shell companies, the fake scholarship program, the business grants, and all the times I'd secretly covered Michael's debts and expenses. "Why didn't you just tell us?" my mother asked, her eyes red from crying. "Why all the deception? Would you have accepted my help?" I countered. "Would it have changed how you treat Michael versus how you treat me? Or would I have just become the family bank while still being expected to be the responsible, understanding older sister?" My father flinched at my words. "We don't play favorites." "Dad, please," I interrupted. My entire childhood was spent being told to be more understanding, more responsible, more mature. Meanwhile, Michael was praised for his creativity and social skills while I was expected to excel academically and emotionally support everyone else. An uncomfortable silence settled over our conversation. Finally, my mother spoke. "We failed you both, didn't we? We put too much pressure on you to be perfect and too little expectation on Michael to be accountable." "The money stops now," I announced. "All of it. Michael's scholarship, your business assistance, the mortgage help, everything ends today." "But the practice," my father began, panic creeping into his voice. "You have 6 weeks of payments already processed," I said firmly. "That's enough time to figure out sustainable solutions. You're both intelligent, capable professionals. You can solve this without my secret support." My pronouncement was met with shocked silence from my parents and resigned understanding from David, who squeezed my hand supportively. "Where's Michael?" my grandmother asked, looking around the dining room. "Shouldn't he be here for Sarah's celebration?" Before anyone could answer, Michael appeared in the restaurant doorway, still wearing his baseball cap, but looking more composed than he had earlier. He walked directly to our table, his face set with determination. "I need to tell everyone something," he announced, his voice carrying across the dining room. "Sarah was right about the cancer. I faked it. There's no diagnosis, no treatment, no medical emergency. I made it all up because I was jealous of her graduation and wanted attention." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. My grandmother actually reached for her water glass with shaking hands. "But that's not all," Michael continued, his voice growing stronger. "I've also been stealing money from Mom and Dad's practice for the past 2 years. Taking cash from the register, billing for services never performed, submitting false insurance claims. I told myself they owed it to me, but really, I was just taking whatever I wanted." The admission stunned me. All this time, I'd been secretly supporting the family, while Michael had been secretly undermining that support through theft. The dysfunction ran even deeper than I'd realized. "I'm sorry," Michael said, looking directly at me. "For the fake illness, for trying to ruin your graduation, for everything. You deserved so much better from your family today." His apology was clearly genuine, but it couldn't undo years of manipulation and the damage he'd caused to what should have been one of the most important days of my life. After the disastrous graduation dinner, I needed space to process everything that had happened. David and I drove to a quiet park overlooking the lake, where we sat on a bench and watched the sunset paint the water in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I feel like I don't even know my own family," I said, leaning against David's shoulder. The fake illness, the stealing, the years of manipulation. How did I miss all of this? "You didn't miss it," David said gently. "You saw the patterns but kept hoping they'd change. That's not naivety, Sarah. That's love. Sometimes love makes us give people more chances than they deserve." "What do I do now?" I asked. "Cut them off completely? Try to rebuild relationships based on honesty? I don't even know where to start." "Maybe start with small steps," David suggested. "Set clear boundaries about financial support. Insist on family therapy. Give people a chance to prove they can change, but don't enable the old patterns to continue." His practical wisdom helped clear some of the emotional fog I'd been struggling through. "I think Michael might actually be ready to change," I said thoughtfully. His apology tonight felt different, more genuine than his usual manipulative performances. "Time will tell," David said. "But the fact that he confessed to the theft without being forced to, that suggests he might finally be ready to take accountability for his actions." In the days following my graduation, our extended family took sides in the conflict. Some cousins thought I was cruel for cutting off financial support, while others praised me for finally establishing boundaries. I started seeing a therapist to process my complicated feelings about my family and my role in enabling their dysfunction. 1 week after graduation, Michael called and asked to meet for coffee. I was hesitant, but curiosity won out. We met at a quiet cafe near campus, and I was surprised by his appearance. Gone was the entitled, attention-seeking persona he'd cultivated for years. He looked tired, humbled, and genuinely remorseful. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began without preamble, "about the scholarship and the financial support. I looked up the shell company names you mentioned, and I did some research. You really have been funding everything, haven't you?" I nodded. "For 3 years. Your apartment, your car, your credit cards, your tuition, all of it." Michael was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. I knew I was living beyond any reasonable means for a college student, but I convinced myself I deserved it somehow. That the family owed me because you always got the praise and attention for being successful. "But I didn't get praise and attention," I said quietly. "I got expectations and responsibility. There's a difference." "I see that now," he admitted. "While you were working 80-hour weeks to build something, I was coasting through college on your secret support and telling myself I was the victim." We sat in silence for several minutes before Michael spoke again. "I enrolled in summer classes to make up the credits I failed. I'm also looking for a job to pay for my own expenses. And I called a therapist to start working on whatever is wrong with me that made me think faking cancer was acceptable." His commitment to change seemed genuine, but I'd been fooled by Michael's performances before. "That's a good start," I said carefully. "But it's going to take time to rebuild trust." "I know," he said. "I don't expect forgiveness right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm finally taking responsibility for my life." 6 months after my graduation day confrontation, the full impact of my financial withdrawal hit my family like a freight train. Michael received an eviction notice when he couldn't make his rent payment. My parents' business loan payments resumed at their original, much higher interest rates. The comfortable lifestyle they'd all grown accustomed to disappeared virtually overnight. I maintained my distance but stayed informed through David, who had somehow become the family mediator in the aftermath of our crisis. He reported that my parents were working with a financial counselor to create a realistic budget based on their actual income. Michael had taken a job at a local restaurant while attending community college to make up his failed credits. "Your brother's actually showing up to work every day," David told me after having lunch with my father. "And he's paying his own rent in a studio apartment across town." It's a pretty dramatic change from his previous lifestyle. "And my parents?" I asked, trying to sound casual while feeling genuinely concerned about their well-being. "They're struggling but adapting," David said. "Your mom mentioned they might sell the practice and work for someone else rather than dealing with business ownership stress. Your dad seems relieved at the prospect, honestly." After 8 weeks of separation, I agreed to meet my parents for dinner at a modest restaurant, their choice, which itself signaled significant change. They both looked older and more tired, but there was something different in their demeanor. Less entitlement, more humility. "We've been working with a financial advisor," my father said after we ordered. "Creating a realistic business plan based on our actual revenue and expenses, not supplemented income we didn't realize we were receiving." "We should have done this years ago," my mother added. "We got comfortable living beyond our means and stopped paying attention to our real financial situation." I was impressed by their accountability and practical approach. "That sounds like a solid plan." "Sarah," my father said, leaning forward, "we owe you an enormous apology. Not just for unknowingly accepting your financial support, but for the years of treating you as the responsible one while making excuses for Michael's behavior." "We've started family therapy," my mother added. "All 3 of us, including Michael. We're learning about patterns we've repeated for years without realizing the damage they caused." Their willingness to examine their own behavior and seek professional help surprised me. I'd expected defensiveness or manipulation, not genuine accountability and self-reflection. After dinner, David suggested a compromise that intrigued me. "What if you offered limited, transparent financial assistance?" he asked. "Not secret support that enables dependency, but specific help with clear boundaries and expectations." "Like what?" I asked. "Like offering to help them with a down payment on a smaller house as a gift, not a loan. Or helping Michael with tuition if he maintains AB average and demonstrates financial responsibility. Transparent help that empowers rather than enables." The idea had merit. It would allow me to support my family without recreating the unhealthy patterns we'd fallen into before. After considerable thought, I called a family meeting at David's house, neutral territory, to discuss potential paths forward. Michael arrived first, looking remarkably different from the entitled college student I'd known. He wore simple work clothes and carried himself with less arrogance than I'd seen in years. "I got promoted to assistant manager at the restaurant," he announced without being asked. "And I'm registered for fall semester with a declared major in business administration. I'm paying for it myself through work study and student loans." "That's impressive," I said, genuinely pleased by his progress. "How are you managing the workload?" "It's hard," he admitted. "I've never had to actually budget my time and money before. But I'm learning, and I kind of like being accountable for my own success." My parents arrived next, bringing a folder of financial documents, much like I'd done at my graduation. "We've worked out a sustainable business plan," my father explained. "We're selling the practice to our associate dentist and staying on as employees. It eliminates the business management stress and provides steady income. We also found a smaller house that fits our actual budget," my mother added. "We'll have enough equity from the current house sale to make a good down payment." I reviewed their plans, impressed by their thoroughness and realism. "This looks very solid," I said, returning their folder. "We don't want your financial help," my father said firmly. "We need to prove to ourselves as much as to you that we can be financially responsible without assistance." Their refusal of my help was perhaps the strongest evidence that genuine change was occurring in our family dynamics. As we continued talking, another revelation emerged that explained some of Michael's previous financial problems. "I've been gambling," he confessed, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Online poker, sports betting, casino trips with friends. I lost thousands of dollars over the past 2 years and covered it up by maxing out credit cards and taking money from the practice." The admission stunned me. All this time, I'd been secretly funding Michael's lifestyle while he'd been secretly gambling away money and stealing from our parents. The dysfunction in our family had been even more complex than I'd realized. I'm attending gamblers' anonymous meetings, Michael continued. And I've installed blocking software on all my devices to prevent access to gambling sites. I know it sounds like more empty promises, but I'm serious about changing this time. His vulnerability and specificity about his recovery efforts suggested genuine commitment rather than another manipulation attempt. After the family meeting, Michael asked to walk with me to a nearby park. We sat on a bench overlooking a pond, watching ducks glide across the water as the sun began to set. I hit rock bottom 3 weeks ago, he said, watching the ducks paddle peacefully across the water. I'd lost my last $100 gambling online, had maxed out every credit card, and was facing eviction. I actually went to a pawn shop to sell Mom's engagement ring that I'd borrowed from her jewelry box. Did you sell it? I asked, my heart sinking at the thought. He shook his head. I couldn't go through with it. Standing there holding Mom's ring, ready to sell a stolen family heirloom for gambling money, that's when I finally saw what I'd become. I walked out of the pawn shop and applied for jobs for the rest of the day. His honesty about the depths of his problems cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were having a genuine conversation without pretense or competition. I never wanted to hurt you, he continued. Not really. I just wanted what you had. Not the money specifically, but the confidence, the sense of purpose. You always knew who you were and what you wanted. I felt like I was drowning while you were swimming effortlessly. I laughed softly, surprising both of us. Effortlessly? Michael, I've been terrified most of my life. Terrified of failing, of disappointing people, of not living up to expectations. I just never showed it. Why not? He asked, genuinely curious. Because I was the responsible one, the achiever. That was my role in the family. You were allowed to struggle and make mistakes. I wasn't. And I was a screw-up, Michael said quietly. The one who needed rescuing and couldn't be trusted with responsibility. We were both trapped by these roles, weren't we? We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant purples and golds. Finally, Michael turned to me with tears in his eyes.
I'm sorry, Sarah.
For the fake cancer, for trying to ruin your graduation, for stealing from the family, for everything. I want to be better. Not like you, I'll never be like you, but a better version of myself. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I'd like to meet that version of Michael. Walking back to David's house, I realized we were doing exactly what David had suggested months earlier. Rewriting the script. Creating new possibilities for who we could be as individuals and as siblings. The process would be messy and imperfect, but for the first time in years, it felt authentic. 1 year after my dramatic graduation day revelation, I stood in the small dressing room of a lakeside wedding venue, adjusting my simple ivory dress. David and I had decided to move forward with our wedding, but we'd completely reimagined it. 50 guests instead of 200, an outdoor ceremony instead of a formal church service, a casual reception instead of an elaborate ballroom affair. You look radiant, my mother said from the doorway. Our relationship had transformed dramatically over the past year. Without the secret financial arrangements and with the help of family therapy, we'd begun developing a more honest, adult relationship. She was learning to see me as a complete person rather than just the responsible daughter, and I was learning to share my vulnerabilities with her. Is Michael here? I asked, trying to sound casual but feeling genuinely nervous about his presence. My mother nodded. He's helping set up chairs by the lake. He's been looking forward to this day, Sarah. I think he wants a chance to celebrate you properly this time. Michael wasn't in my wedding party. That level of trust would take longer to rebuild, but I had invited him as a family member, representing a tentative step toward healing our relationship. The changes in our family over the past year had been remarkable. My parents had successfully sold their dental practice and were working as associate dentists at a larger clinic. They'd moved into a modest but comfortable house that they could afford on their actual income. More importantly, they seemed happier and less stressed than they'd been in years. Michael had surprised everyone with his transformation. He'd completed his community college courses with a 3.7 GPA, transferred to a 4-year university, and was working part-time while maintaining his commitment to Gamblers Anonymous. He lived in a small apartment with a roommate, drove a used car he'd purchased himself, and was slowly rebuilding his credit through responsible financial habits. Our family therapy sessions had been challenging but enlightening. We'd uncovered generational patterns of dysfunction that stretched back decades. My father's parents had shown extreme favoritism toward his older brother, creating the template he unconsciously repeated with his own children. My mother's family had valued appearances over authenticity, explaining her discomfort with financial transparency and difficult conversations. These insights didn't excuse the years of unhealthy dynamics, but they helped us understand the roots of our problems and work actively to address them. "It's time," my father said, appearing at the dressing room door. He looked healthier and more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, the stress of financial problems and business ownership no longer weighing on his shoulders. "Ready?" he asked, offering me his arm. I took his arm, and we walked down toward the lake, where white chairs had been arranged in a semicircle facing the water. David waited near the water's edge, handsome in his navy suit and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. Our closest friends and family members turned to watch as my father walked me down the grassy aisle. I spotted Michael in the third row, wearing a simple gray suit that he'd clearly purchased himself rather than the designer clothes he used to prefer. When our eyes met, he gave me a genuine smile, not the performative grin he'd perfected over the years, but something real and supportive. The ceremony was brief and heartfelt. David and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising honesty, partnership, and growth. As we sealed our marriage with a kiss, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing from our original wedding plans. This ceremony reflected who we truly were, not who we thought we should be. At the reception held at the Lakeside Pavilion, the atmosphere was relaxed and joyful. During dinner, Michael surprised everyone by asking to make a toast. I tensed slightly, still carrying some anxiety about his public speeches after the graduation debacle. "I'm not part of the wedding party," he began, standing with a glass of champagne. "And there are good reasons for that. But I wanted to say something to my sister and David." He paused, collecting himself, and I noticed his hands were steady, no trembling from nerves or withdrawal. "Sarah, for most of our lives, I saw you as competition instead of support. Your success felt like my failure. Your achievements highlighted my shortcomings. What I've learned this year is that your light doesn't diminish mine. It can actually help me find my own path." Tears pricked my eyes as he continued with more confidence. "David, thank you for loving my sister and for your patience with our complicated family. You've shown us what healthy relationships look like, and that's been invaluable for all of us." He raised his glass toward us. "To Sarah and David, may your honesty with each other create the foundation for a lifetime of happiness, and may your marriage be built on truth rather than the secrets that nearly destroyed our family." The toast was met with warm applause, and I felt a surge of pride for Michael's growth and maturity. After the formal speeches, he approached me during the dancing portion of the evening. "Thank you for inviting me," he said simply. "I know I didn't deserve to be here after what I did at your graduation." "You're my brother," I replied. "Despite everything, that means something to me." "I have something for you," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "It's not a traditional wedding gift, but I wanted you to have it." Inside the envelope was a detailed business plan for a nonprofit organization focused on gambling addiction recovery programs for young adults. The research was thorough, the financial projections realistic, and the mission statement passionate. "I'm not asking for funding," he clarified quickly. "I just wanted your feedback. As someone who built something successful, your opinion matters to me." I was touched by the gesture and what it represented, Michael seeking my input as an equal rather than a source of financial support. "This is really impressive," I said, genuinely surprised by the quality of his work. "Have you thought about applying for grants or foundation funding?" His face lit up. "Actually, yes. I've already submitted applications to 3 organizations that support addiction recovery initiatives." "I'd be happy to review your grant applications," I offered. "Maybe we could have coffee next week to discuss it." "I'd like that," he said, and I could see he meant it. Later that evening, As David and I danced to our wedding song, I reflected on how different this celebration felt from what we'd originally planned. The fake medical crisis that was meant to ruin my graduation had ultimately saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. Michael's jealousy and my secret financial control had been symptoms of deeper dysfunction that finally had been brought into the light. The painful process of exposing those secrets had been necessary for genuine healing to begin. "What are you thinking about?" David asked, noticing my thoughtful expression. "Just how grateful I am," I said. "For this day, for our marriage, for the chance to build something real with my family. Even after everything they put you through?" "Especially after everything," I replied. "The crisis forced us to be honest about who we really are instead of the roles we've been playing. It was painful, but it was necessary." Our honeymoon was simple. A week at a quiet cabin in the mountains where David and I hiked, read books, and talked about our future. We discussed having children someday and how we would approach parenting differently than our families of origin. "We'll make different mistakes," David pointed out pragmatically. "No parent is perfect." "True," I agreed, "but we'll be honest about them. No family secrets, no assigned roles, no financial manipulation, even well-intentioned manipulation." On our last evening, watching the sunset from the cabin's deck, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The fake cancer diagnosis that was meant to steal my graduation spotlight had ultimately given our family the crisis we needed to address years of dysfunction. Michael's gambling addiction and theft, my secret financial control, our parents' enabling patterns, all of it had been symptoms of a family system that prioritized appearances over authenticity. The painful process of exposing these secrets had been necessary for real change to occur. When we returned home, I followed through on my promise to review Michael's grant applications. We met at a coffee shop, and I was impressed by the thought and research he'd put into his nonprofit concept. "These applications are really strong," I told him honestly. "You've identified a genuine need and developed a practical approach to addressing it." "Really?" His face lit up with genuine pride, not the entitled expectation I'd grown accustomed to, but earned satisfaction in his work. "Have you thought about starting small? Maybe volunteering with existing programs while you develop your own organization?" "Actually, I'm already doing that," he said. "I volunteer at the Addiction Recovery Center downtown 3 evenings a week. I'm learning about program administration and client services." As we discussed his plans and aspirations, I realized we were having our first conversation as equals. Not as the responsible sister and the problem child, not as the secret benefactor and unknowing recipient, but as two adults supporting each other's goals and growth. 2 years after my graduation day confrontation, Michael's nonprofit received its first major grant. My parents had settled comfortably into their new lifestyle and were contributing to retirement accounts for the first time in years. David and I had purchased a house with a guest room that frequently hosted family visits. The transformation wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements and occasionally fell back into old patterns. But the foundation had shifted from secrets and resentment to honesty and mutual support. Regular family therapy sessions helped us maintain healthy communication and address issues before they became crises. Michael had become someone I genuinely enjoyed spending time with. His nonprofit was making a real difference in young people's lives, and he developed into a thoughtful, responsible adult. The brother who had once faked cancer to steal my spotlight was now someone I turned to for advice and genuine conversation. Our parents had learned to see both of us as complete individuals rather than filling assigned family roles. They celebrated Michael's achievements without minimizing mine, and they supported my career without burdening me with excessive expectations. As for me, I'd learned that being the fixer and the responsible one wasn't my only identity. I could be vulnerable, ask for help, make mistakes, and still be valued by my family. The financial control I'd maintained through secret support had been an illusion that ultimately hurt everyone, including myself. Real support, I discovered, came from honest communication about our needs and boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their dysfunction, even when it causes temporary pain. The fake cancer crisis that nearly destroyed my graduation day had actually saved our family by forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths. Michael's attempt to manipulate and deceive had backfired, creating the catalyst for genuine change and healing. Looking back, I realized that my secret financial support had been motivated by love but executed through control. I'd wanted to help my family while maintaining the status quo, but real help requires honesty about problems and willingness to change unhealthy patterns. The journey from that painful graduation day to a healthy family relationship had been difficult and imperfect. But it had been worth every uncomfortable conversation, every boundary I'd had to set, every moment of doubt about whether forgiveness was possible. Sometimes what looks like an ending, a family crisis, a confrontation, a painful revelation, is actually the beginning of something much better. Our family's dysfunction had to be exposed before it could be healed. The lies had to be revealed before truth could take their place. Have you ever experienced a family crisis that ended up transforming your relationships for the better? My brother's fake cancer diagnosis was meant to humiliate me but actually saved our family by forcing us to confront years of dysfunction and dishonesty. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might be struggling with complicated family dynamics. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these difficult relationships can be incredibly healing. Remember, sometimes the most painful family crises become the foundation for the strongest, most authentic relationships. The truth may hurt initially, but it's the only path to genuine healing and connection. Until next time, keep believing that even the most damaged family relationships can be transformed through honesty, boundaries, and the courage to change unhealthy patterns that may have existed for generations.